We are so blessed to have General Snowden here today. He is the senior surviving veteran of the battle for Iwo Jima. Each year he takes a group back to Iwo Jima with the Japanese. He had such a distinguished career after he left the Marine Corps, and actually working with the Japanese. He was head of the American Chamber of Commerce in Tokyo. He was almost an assistant ambassador to Senator Mike Mansfield, a Marine. And he's recognized throughout the Marine Corps and many larger circles in the Marine Corps as one of the most distinguished Marines and distinguished gentlemen we've ever produced by our Corps. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Lieutenant General Larry Snowden.
The original group of survivors who went back there went in 1985. It was a group built around Camp Pendleton in San Diego, and they had a travel agent, one of their members, so he was able to set up the travel. And General Charlie Cooper, who was commanding General Fleet Marine Force Pacific in Honolulu, arranged for the Air Force to fly us from Japan, from Yokota to Iwo. And when General Cooper told the group that in Honolulu, one of the members spoke up and said, "Do we have to pay extra to get that flight down to Iwo?" Charlie Cooper said, "We didn't charge you the first time you went. We're not going to charge you this time either." Charlie was a great fella, and he did just what he promised to do and delivered the goods all the way. At that time, in 1985, there was no Japanese involvement. As we stood around on the island talking about the 40th anniversary, several folks said, "Well, it would be great if we did this again for the 50th anniversary." And then we all laughed, saying, "Who's going to be here to celebrate 50th anniversary?" God, I can't believe it. 67 years later, I'm still standing here talking about it. Incredible. Well, anyway, in 1993, several of those folks called me and said, "General, can we get a reunion on the 5th? Well, I decided to take the bull by the horn and arrange it. So I had lived and worked in Japan for 10 years in a prominent position. I knew a lot of senior people in the Japanese government. I had previously known Ambassador Mondale when he was back in Washington. So I went over there and propositioned the Japanese with the idea of a joint reunion on Iwo Jima, in which we would honor the dead on both sides. The young bureaucrats in the Foreign Office said, "Not a good idea. You Americans will use it as an opportunity to crow about your victory." I said, "Let me tell you something, fella. When I left Japan in official capacity and in my civilian job, the only thing I left here that I care about is my personal integrity. And I'm going to tell you now, we're going for the purpose of honoring the dead on both sides. There'll be no victory celebration. There'll be no one who talks about victory. There'll be no T-shirts that cry, 'We won in the Battle of Iwo Jima.' None of that. I promise you it will not happen. And we have never had an untoward incident in these trips we've been making." Now, we were told by our senior leaders, Navy and Marine Corps, that we could probably do this in 5 days. I had my troops aboard an LST. We landed in amphibian tractors. And we were separated, from other ships in the convoy, so we only had our own resources to talk about, and an occasional message from the higher headquarters that didn't tell us much about details. But we looked at the map of Iwo Jima, and if you look at it, little pork chop island, just 8 square miles only. Now, we had just finished Saipan and Tinian, which were large land masses. So we looked at Saipan and Tinian and looked at Iwo. Hey, 5 days sounds pretty good to me. Besides that, we were going to have 76 days of heavy bombardment from Navy and the Army Air Corps. We were going to have 72 hours of intense heavy bombardment from the battleships and the cruisers and the heavy guns of the Navy. Still wasn't enough. The intelligence we had suggested, and I remember the word so clearly, It said that the volcanic ash and sand of Iwo Jima would not be an impediment to the movement of vehicles or troops. How could they miss it that badly? The sun, the surface of the ocean, the beaches on Iwo, and the tides built up some sand berms, as many as some of them 15 feet high. And my tractor landed opposite one of those berms, 15 feet high. We got halfway up that berm, and the tractor spun around as the tractor stopped. In those days, the LVTs didn't have any cover over the top. It was all open. So I just yelled, "Bail out!" And we all jumped over the side and jumped in the nearest bomb crater we could find. Couldn't dig a foxhole. You just had to find a bomb crater, because that sand filled in the hole as soon as you put your foot out, just like water. It filled the hole. You'd never know it was there. Anyway, I had all the confidence, despite all that. We didn't know how bad a damage the battle damage was, or the bombing that was going to. And you know, those 500-pound bombs that the Army Air Corps dropped in tremendous quantities, they didn't scratch the surface of those defenses underground. They just didn't. In those days, we didn't have anything except point detonating. When the bomb hit, it exploded. Now, you know, we got them to go 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 feet deep before they explode. It really caused a problem. We didn't have the benefit of that technology in those days. Some historians stated it so well. The problem with Iwo Jima was that we were on it and they were in it. And I continued to hear stories from the Japanese side and my friends in Japan about the desperate circumstances which those defenders faced on the island. First of all, if you, as the five of us know, and you got into a cave at all, you know it was dreadfully hot, dreadfully humid. Those young men digging the trenches and the tunnels down there could only work for 15 minutes, then pull off, and another man stepped in and did it for them. 6 months before we arrived, they were forced to go on half rations and half ration of water. Now, when people say to me, "So half a ration of water, water's water," I say, wait a minute, you don't understand. Most people today, you know, try to drink something like 64 ounces of water a day. Those guys had one canteen, and they had to use half of it each day. That's a tough life. We didn't let them get a resupply. There was none available from their sources, so it was a tough life. The fact of life is, though, that efforts continue on our side and on the Japanese side to find those who are buried underground. When we go with the reunion of honor, we cannot land a 747. Too big, say the Japanese, too big. It will disturb the souls of those who still lie under the runway. My American friends say to me, "Hey, what kind of rationale is that?" And I say, it's Japanese rationale. It's their island. We want to go back there, we got to obey the rules. So we honor, acknowledge their customs, and so we don't take any aircraft bigger than a 737, which is only 142 people. But we're going to take 2 this time, so we're going to have a good time up there. And you know, the search still goes on to find burial sites. Just about a year ago, they uncovered one site with the help of Major General Fred Haynes that had 2,000 Japanese bodies. And that task was then to sort out the remains, get them identified, get them back to Tokyo for a proper burial. We still have some missing too. But the fact of life is, one of the unfortunate things about every war is we always come up with some MIAs. We never know what really happened to some of those on both sides. Well, today I'm pleased to say that we're remembering the flag raising on Iwo Jima on the 23rd of February. Being here in San Francisco, we automatically think of Joe Rosenthal. We have Joe's own words about how lucky he was to get that picture. In 1/400th of a second, Joe captured a picture that is still recognized, most recognized picture around the world today. And I think it will be for a long time. It's my privilege to salute my fellow survivors of Iwo Jima. It's my privilege to say again to their families, my sympathy for your loss. My prayer every day is that God will continue to bless America with young men and young women like those who are fighting today in Afghanistan. They have continued to meet the standards which you Iwo Jima survivors established when you fought so gallantly 67 years ago. And I know that God is going to provide future generations of young men and women who are willing to take up a challenge to serve as gallantly as you did. To all of you, my thanks for your warm hospitality today. I would welcome a chance to answer your questions. Thank you. I suppose I can't have any clearer memory than when I got pieces of that 362 millimeter mortar in my neck and base of my head. I remember that pretty well. I didn't know when I got it. You know, on the battlefield, you don't hear the one that gets you. But that one got me, and I was evacuated to the hospital ship, went overnight to Guam, to the Fleet Hospital, talked to a doctor into giving me a discharge because I didn't feel I was very badly wounded. And I appealed to the colonel who represented FMF Pac Forward to let me go back. So I'm one of only 2 Marine officers wounded, evacuated, hospitalized, returned to Iwo Jima and rejoined their unit. And I did just that. And I told the colonel, I'm not going to go back because I'm a hero. I don't want to go up there and get hit again, but I did. But the fact of life is, I said to him, that's my family up there. I have lived with those guys. I've played softball, had beer fuss, all that with those guys for the past year and a half. I haven't seen my wife and child in that time, so they are my family, and I want to be where they are. And I don't want to be down here on Guam while they're fighting for their lives on Iwo.
What a collection. And all of us, we salute you. Thank you for what you've done for our country. Thank you so much.